Is the United States about to start World War III by attacking Iran? According to the following video dating back to 2009, the war to start World War III has been prepared since late 2004 with the stockpiling of weapons, establishing a state of readiness, etc. All that is underway. In 2003, the United States sent a team into Israel to modernize their air defense systems, which is now integrated into the United States and NATO air defense systems. What is prevailing in public is an alliance between the United States, NATO, and Israel. U.S. military planners are often unaware of the broader consequences of their actions. The United States has launched a military adventure at the NATO level with its allies. They believe their own propaganda that they are going to make the world safer by launching a nuclear attack on Iran. They are demonizing Muslims because the oil happens to be in Muslim lands. It's a war of conquest because what the war planners are after are resources of oil and gas to be under their control. The West, being nudged by Israel, has been suspicious that Iran is developing a nuclear bomb, but Tehran denies the claims, insisting that its atomic intentions are peaceful. What is the truth? The truth is this, that no matter the reasons, we are eventually going to war, and it's going to be brutal. Watch the following videos, the first dating back to 2009. Jesus Christ is our only hope. I pray you are trusting in Christ this day.
Well, this rhetoric directed against Iran has been ongoing for several years. In fact, it started in the immediate wake of the invasion of Iraq. And I think what is important to understand is that the United States, NATO, as well as Israel are involved and have been involved in planning a war directed against Iran, and what they want is to essentially have the support of public opinion, present Iran as a threat to global security due to its alleged nuclear weapons, which it doesn't have, and of course present a justification and a pretext for humanitarian intervention on behalf of the international community. What I think people have to understand is A, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, and B, there are a number of European countries which are considered to be non-nuclear states which have nuclear weapons, and I'm talking about Belgium, Holland, Germany, Italy, and Turkey. These are 5 non-nuclear states which have nuclear weapons made in America, stationed in their military bases, and these are in fact targeted at Iran. It's a clear case of distortion and double standards. It's to build a war pretext incident, and I think what is very serious here is that if any kind of military action directed against Iran will immediately lead to escalation. Namely, at the moment we have 3 distinct war theaters in the Middle East. We have Afghanistan and overflowing into Pakistan on the one hand, we have Iraq and Palestine. Now the moment there is any kind of military action, punitive action directed against Iran, that whole region will flare up from the eastern Mediterranean right to the Chinese border. And we must also understand that this action against Iran is also indirectly targeting 2 main countries, China and Russia, which have extensive military cooperation agreements with Iran. And consequently, this has to be understood as part of a global war. If there is an attack on Iran, I think we must understand that we are potentially in a World War III scenario. That whole region flares up, and if other countries intervene, such as China or Russia, even in a passive way, we are in a World War III scenario. I know for a fact that this war has been prepared since late 2004 in terms of the stockpiling of weapons, establishing a state of readiness. All those all that is underway. Just about a year ago, the United States sent in a mission to Israel to modernize their air defense system. And the air defense system of Israel is now integrated into that of the United States and NATO, so that in effect what we're seeing is the coalescence of an alliance between the United States, NATO, and Israel. It's a formidable force in terms of capabilities. The issue is that U.S. military planners are often unaware of the broader consequences of their actions. They defined back in 2002, 2003, the notion that U.S. tactical nuclear weapons, what they call the mini nukes, are harmless to the surrounding civilian population. In fact, the Senate then approved the use of these tactical nuclear weapons in a conventional war theater, and they said they could in fact be used they could be used on a preemptive basis against Iran and even against other countries. So that what the nuclear doctrine is telling us is that we can actually use these nuclear weapons as humanitarian bombs, because civilians won't be affected. The only thing we're going to do is to go after the bunkers it's a bunker buster technology. And so that it's an extremely dangerous crossroads in which we are today. The United States has launched a military adventure at the global level with its NATO allies. And those who decide on these military actions believe their own propaganda. They actually believe that they're going to make the world safer by waging a nuclear attack on Iran. And they also believe, they may also believe that Iran is a threat. And so that the whole propaganda ploy, which is presented in the Western media, has got completely out of whack. It's a propaganda ploy which justifies actions which could be devastating. We have a situation where the major political figures like Obama or Hillary Clinton are in the diplomatic arena attempting to build this consensus. The constant and persistent reference to the war on terrorism as a justification for waging war in the Middle East, when in fact anybody who has some understanding of that region knows that what is at stake is the oil. Okay, and 60% of the oil and gas lies in the region, which extends from the tip of Saudi Arabia up to the Caspian Sea basin. It's a very strategic region. And why are they why are they demonizing Muslims? It's very simple. They're demonizing Muslims because the oil happens to be in Muslim lands. I undertook the calculation that something of the order of between 65 and 70%, depending on the estimates of the world's oil reserves, lie in Muslim countries. So that is why we demonize. That's why they demonize the Muslims, present them as enemies of the Western world, and ultimately, if those lands had been inhabited by Buddhists, they would have demonized the Buddhists. So that we're in a situation where we have a war of conquest. It's the conquest of oil and gas reserves. The United States of America has less than 2% of the global oil and gas reserves. That region, strategic region, has something of the order of 60%. And Iran has approximately 10% of global oil reserves, 5 times those of the United States of America. And it's very clearly indicated in national security documents that the objective of these wars, ultimately, that's not something they'll say in public, but the objective is ultimately to gain strategic control over oil and gas reserves, and also to exclude any kind of competing powers in the region, which include China and Russia, which of course are countries which have important interests in the region. They're also involved in the oil industry in a very pervasive way, And the idea is not only to make sure that we control that region, but also that we exclude any kind of possibility that countries in that region could trade or have international cooperation agreements with countries like China or Russia.
The United States says it is now convinced that this was the work of Iran. The weekend attacks on 2 massive oil production plants has had a global impact economically and could be about to shift the security dial across the region. With these satellite images and others which the US is keeping classified, American intelligence analysts claim that cruise missiles were used, not just drones, and that they were fired from Iran, not Yemen. In the red boxes, holes are visible. They are, according to US officials, piercings made by the missiles. There are at least 17 impact points. One of the 2 sites was toured by Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, although state TV didn't show any images of the damage. Other than declaring that the attacks had temporarily cut the country's oil production in half, we still don't have a clear idea of how bad the damage is or how long the facilities will be out of action. A spokesman for the Saudi military said their initial investigation at the site tallied with the US assessment.
The weapons that were used in the terrorist attack, whether it be an Abqaiq or Quraysh, initial evidence shows that these weapons are Iranian weapons, and we are investigating this.
The Iranian President Rouhani is in Turkey at the moment at a regional conference. The Glasgow-educated lawyer and cleric gave little away at the photo op. In Tehran, a government spokesman denied any involvement.
We reject these types of statements and projections. The Islamic Republic of Iran has clearly declared that it supports the people of Yemen and their rights. But to accuse Iran of these attacks and defensive measures is in line with the US policy of maximum falsehood.
Back in June, the United States claimed Iran had shot down one of its drones. Donald Trump called off at the very last minute a retaliatory strike on Iran. Now he says his military is locked and loaded again. The Iranian judgment may well be that he's bluffing, because domestically he's after re-election, not another war. In 2 tweets, the US president said first that he was waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of the attack and under what terms we would proceed. And then the Iranians say they had nothing to do with the attack on Saudi Arabia. We'll see. Tonight in New York, the US ambassador used the UN chamber to echo her government's accusations against Iran.
As Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has clearly stated, there is no evidence that the attacks came from Yemen. Emerging information indicates that responsibility lies with Iran.
It's also emerged today that Iran had seized another commercial vessel in the Gulf. It accused its crew of smuggling fuel to the United Arab Emirates. It is still holding a British-flagged vessel seized in July. All of this together amounts to a dangerous escalation with wide implications economically and for regional peace. Mark Stone, Sky News.
Before he was president, Donald Trump warned the US against threatening Iran with guns and bombs. He said negotiations were his forte and he could get Tehran to agree to Washington's demands. But now that he's in charge, talking seems to have made matters worse. On Sunday, Trump tweeted, "If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again." The tweet follows an explosion near the US embassy in Iraq's capital, Baghdad. No one's claimed responsibility, but the US is suggesting who's to blame.
Iran's been a problem for so many years. If you go back, just take a look at all of the conflict that they've caused.
The attack in Baghdad comes after US naval exercises in the Arabian Sea. Tehran describes the drills as psychological warfare, but Trump says that's not what it's about.
The deal that President Obama made was a horror show. We don't have good inspection rights. We weren't even allowed to inspect some of the most important sites, like military bases, certain things.
In May, Iran suspended its commitment to the 2015 nuclear deal and threatened to resume production of uranium, a chemical element used to make nuclear weapons. The country's economy is struggling under US sanctions, reimposed after Washington withdrew from the agreement last year.
The US will continue escalating the tension to achieve three goals. First, stir up domestic protests in Iran by adding pressure on the country. Secondly, strip Iran of its influence over the Middle Eastern countries. And the most important goal is to bring Iran back to the negotiating table, but under the US conditions.
Many countries are concerned about how this could end.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia does not want war in the region, does not strive for that, and will do all in its power to prevent a war.
A war would further destabilize an already fragile Middle East. Preventing one may be the only thing all sides agree on.
President, are we going to war with Iran? Hope not.
Regan Devine, TRT World.
The attack on September 14th against Saudi Arabian oil facilities represents a dramatic escalation of Iranian aggression. It is clear, based on detailed exploitation conducted by Saudi, United States, and other international investigative teams, that the weapons used in the attack were Iranian-produced and were not launched from Yemen, as was initially claimed. To prevent further escalation, Saudi Arabia requested international support to help protect the kingdom's critical infrastructure. The United Arab Emirates has also requested assistance. In response to the kingdom's request, the President has approved the deployment of U.S. forces, which will be defensive in nature and primarily focused on air and missile defense. We will also work to accelerate the delivery of military equipment to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to enhance their ability to defend themselves. As the President has made clear, the United States does not seek conflict with Iran. That said, we have many other military options available should they be necessary.
And on troop numbers? I would say at this point a moderate deployment, Phil, and we'll have more details for you next week, but not ready to share the details.
Not thousands. Thousands would be not moderate.
That's fair to say, not thousands.
Lucas?